All right, so we're here already. Welcome, Gene. How we doing?
Doing good, man. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
As I said, long time no see.
I know.
Thank you for joining us from the space station. Everything looks very sterilized.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, my office is very boring. So this is what you got. You got a white wall. It is what it is.
It's fine. We'll get a couple fake diplomas and some
Yeah.
macaroni pictures from the kids and stuff.
Exactly. I got plenty of that crap. I'm the
Okay.
worst parent when it comes to that too. Like I'm not the sentimental, like, let's keep all your artwork. If it's not good artwork, I'm not keeping it. I'm sorry. I'm not that guy.
Damn.
I got standards. And they better have some standards too.
Sorry, 2-year-old, but I get it. You know what? You're raising a standard of excellence
Exactly.
in your
We're not gonna
children, which you
we're not
have
gonna
them.
reward mediocrity. We're not giving participation trophies out.
That's our generation has been bad mouthed for so apparently we love participation trophies. We don't even
Yeah,
want to win. We're just happy with the ribbon.
yeah.
It's a little
For
silly.
certain things, I get it. I get it. I get the why behind it.
Hmm.
But after a certain age, it's like, come on, we're playing sports here.
Yeah, I've heard like no one really thinks they won when they get a participation trophy. They're not like, yeah.
Yeah.
But so you have
For a
kids.
5-year-old, they're just happy to have a trophy though. So it's
Mm.
good for that age.
You are with children. You are a father.
I am to
Last
3.
name
Imagine that.
3.
Yeah.
Or
When I first started, when I first started, I think Elijah, he's our 12-year-old, and he was probably my wife was either pregnant or he was like a newborn when I first started getting into comedy. And so since then we got the three. We got Elijah's 12, London is 9, and then our newest one, Shiloh, is 2.5. She'll be 3 in June.
damn, congratulations. That is
Thank
amazing.
you. Yeah,
And
it's
what
pretty
a
crazy.
funny, like your first child is kind of a good marker point for like when
Yeah.
your stand-up career, like because
Yeah.
12 years ago, we're talking 2008 now. And that is, I was looking through my past flyers for the show I had, Casa de Haha, and I only found like one or two with you on them. I remember
Yeah.
not being able to get you as much as I wanted on the
Really.
show. Or maybe you have a different, maybe you were like, that motherfucker doesn't book me. What the hell? Um,
That's how
that's what
I
you did in
remembered. I was
hindsight.
like, I never got a call from Daniel. I felt like my comedy wasn't smart enough.
I did hear that. I hated that because we had plenty of stupid people, but hopefully there was nothing like that
No.
happening. But it was another time. We were running around in the Miami scene, running into each other all
Going to
kinds of shows.
Churchill's and yeah.
What was a little like snapshot of your life then? What were you expecting to get out of stand-up comedy back then? What was your attitude?
So like for the longest time, I had this love for comedy. Like I was fun in circles, and I'm sure you probably had a similar feeling where you were funny in groups and you loved comedy, you liked making people laugh. You just had that feeling that was a really cool feeling when people laugh at your jokes, even in just inner circles. And I always wanted to do stand up. I used to watch stand up, all that. And I was probably so 2008, I was 29 and I hadn't been on stage. I'd never written a joke. And a friend of mine, what was the motivator, which is a really weird motivator, but what actually got me off the bench to finally do stand up was a friend of mine who was, I'm not going to say who it was, but she knows who she is because I've told her this. She is one of the like nicest people you will ever meet. And her and her husband got into boxing. So she was at this gym doing boxing, and she actually got into an exhibition match and fought someone. And we're talking about like it just did not make sense for her because she's the nicest person in the world to be like punching people. And it didn't go great for her. She got in some licks, but she got hit a lot more than she was hitting. And I was
Mhm.
like, dude, if she can get in here and actually get punched in the face with somebody, I can get on stage finally and quit talking about it. And if I get booed, I get booed. Like at least I'm not getting punched in the face. So that
That's
was
some
it. And I was
perspective.
like,
I love that.
that's how I felt about it. I was like, you know what? I got to stop talking about it. Either do it or don't. And at some point, I just didn't want to live with the regret of not
No.
knowing, not having it. So I finally had signed up for it was my first improv show. This was my first show, but my first like improv show was one of those. Remember they had the competition, the turkey competition shows that they did
Of
at the
course.
Fort Lauderdale one. I signed up for that, but it was like maybe 2 months out. And I was like, there's absolutely no way this is going to be my first show. So Colin was a friend of mine at the time, and he took me around to some of the local like coffee spots. There was what was it, Java Delights, I think was one of them. There was another one up in Boca
Yeah, they
off
come and
Glades.
go
Did
so
you ever get
quick.
up to that one?
Right.
The Funky Buddha. It was the Funky Buddha.
Oh, Funky Buddha, fantastic. Yeah, that was a mainstay
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
So he took me around to some of the spots, and I just started trying to put a set together and get ready for that show.
And did
And I ended up winning that show.
damn
Yeah,
that
which is
that's
pretty
it.
cool.
I was about to say, did you get pummeled emotionally the way your friend got pummeled physically?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely in some of those early ones. Like my first one was pretty brutal. First time up, as most of us, like the first time up, you just need to like tear the
it
band-aid
should
off and
be.
do it.
If you do it
Yeah,
on your first time, you are getting set up for some ridiculous expectations. Like
yeah,
those class shows at the improv where your first show is for friends and family on the beautiful stage.
right.
Everyone crushes. And then you go to the real world in an open mic next week and you're like, just your world shatters because you just
Yeah,
thought,
but not everybody crushes. I'm sure you remember some of those shows where, you have the open mic and you got to bring their 10 people or whatever. And there were some folks that got up there and it was their first time ever doing comedy. I'm like, how in the world do you get to a room of that size and you let that be your first time? Like, I don't know. That was always weird to me. I was like, you're gonna try it now? You're gonna try that joke for the first time now?
right, right.
That's
People have
ballsy.
no understanding of the game and how to come up. But those open mic nights were brutal. I was just meaning those like those special shows like where you take a class at the improv and it's all
Oh
this like
yeah.
closed group. Those open mic shows were savage because everyone was like rooting for their own person, and sometimes they'd want to laugh at others, especially those contest shows.
Yeah.
They'd be watching you laugh or like laughing at you and be like, "No, I gotta laugh at my friend."
Yeah.
Competitions in comedy always ridiculous. But so that was then. Flash forward, if this was a normal comedy podcast, we'd be still going down that train.
Yeah.
Later, you no longer have been pursuing stand-up comedy. When did that change?
Um, you know, I was listening to somebody else on your podcast, and they were just talking about how they never really liked the grind of it, like the going out and the getting to the shows. And I never minded that. Like I enjoyed that. I feel like that's a different perspective too. I feel like if you like that aspect of it, you can be successful in it. For me, it was having my son, like I would go to these shows and I wasn't in a great place financially. Like we just were not doing well. So it was costing me money to go to some of these shows. Like we weren't getting paid. So you have to drive over to Naples or excuse me, or wherever, and you might get $100 or $50, but then you end up drinking with all the comics afterwards. So
Gas, food, you're done.
yeah,
If you break even.
yeah, you end up in a deficit every single time. So that's really what was the tipping point for me, where it was just, I couldn't sustain it as much as I liked it. It's just I probably started just too late,
Interesting.
and I just didn't. I felt like ultimately, I think that you either kind of dedicate to it and you say, I'm going to do this or I'm not. And for me, as much as I loved it, I thought I was pretty good at it. Um, I just didn't want to wait. I could be years, you just don't know how long it's going to take before that thing happens. And I had a kid to take care of. So, fortunately my wife was still around. So we weren't married at the time, but it just, it is what it is.
Dude, well, I mean, and you managed
Take an educated guess.
to stay together, to make these decisions together as a family. Like that kind of thing I've seen many times where that breaks up the marriage because the one person's like, no, I need to follow this, and the other person's like, sometimes they're flexible enough to try for a while, and then sometimes they're like, look, this is just not sustainable, like you said.
Yeah.
um I think it's such a hard but important ability to be able to like check yourself and be like, look, what is my life going to be like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Do I still want to
Yeah.
be hustling for these drink ticket shows so that I can pop and like,
Which very well could have been the reality. Like I still could have been doing that same thing, until you get that one break or that, or you move to LA because you got to make it happen out there. And will the family come along? So for me, it was that, man. Like there's definitely some selfishness to it. Like I want to still do it. I wish I had pursued it, but at the end of the day, I did value the family aspect, and I wanted that more than anything else. So that's what was the priority.
dude, amen. And it's funny to see that like the what if kind of scenarios. Like you mentioned, maybe you got into it a little late. What if?
Yeah.
What if you had gotten into it? I jumped into it right after college. And when I was in 2008 in Casa, I was maybe like 22. So I was starting my 20s. You were finishing your 20s at that point.
Right.
And my 30s hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Like my priorities completely just shifted overnight. They did not. And, this whole podcast is just trying to figure out, what am I doing with stand up? What is the relationship here? Well, how is this going
Yeah.
to enrich my life and not make me worse, not take away from my life?
But that's the thing, like exactly like you said, it's, you know, and I'm there. We know people that they made that decision and they stuck with it, and maybe they were successful, maybe they're still grinding, but there is a cost, and it costed their family something, or it costed the relationship. So there's definitely that, but also I think once you get a taste of it, you don't get that out of your system, So exactly what you're saying, where you got to scratch that itch. I was so once you called me, I was like, absolutely, I want to like get on this podcast because I've had that. I'm like 42 now, so I am like desperate to scratch that itch again. And like, do I need to go get on stage somewhere just to
right.
find a way to do it? Do I need to like start a podcast? Like, I have no idea what to do to scratch that creative itch because it's only getting itchier.
I can just see this like red bump on the back of
Yeah,
it. God
exactly. It's
damn.
like plaque psoriasis that's taking over my whole arm, and I don't know what to do about it. There's no ointment that's working.
That's the comedy calling or something. Like once you're jumped in, once you get a taste of that real, the lifestyle, the laughter, what it really is. I don't think everyone who starts comedy gets a taste of that, but if you're in it for a
Yeah.
while, you at least taste it vicariously, or hopefully you get a bite onto it. So
Do you remember that first, like, because that's really what does it? It's that first moment, that first time you killed and you had a great set. That's what like gets you hooked. Do you remember that first night? Was it pretty early on for you, or?
it was probably like my first thing was a college competition where we had like two preliminary shows that were in the dark in grass, like before a movie night, which were terrifying. But it led up to an actual show, which was the contest, and I had support and I did well. I practiced. I did well enough for my first thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like a different reality, like a new drug, new. And I myself, like you, I had been funny in the back of the room and with my own close friends. I never thought it was something I could bring in front
Yeah.
of people and become an extrovert like that. That's was my first 5 years in Miami. Was like it took me 5 years to start inviting people to see me because I was so unsure of how I was.
Yeah.
Even I had nice people saying things, or I would have quit long ago. But yeah, man. What about you? What was your was it that turkey show?
That would have been the first one. Yeah. When I first did it, like the first time I got on stage, like I said, I was terrible, drunk, like it was atrocious. But I felt good. Like I didn't care that I didn't do well. It was just the fact that I did it. I
You
was like,
got up and you
okay,
got
now I gotta, exactly like you said, I gotta practice now. Like I have to make this good. And that show was the first time that I put a set together. I was, on point with my time. Uh, and I just delivered. And to have a whole room of 300 plus people laughing at some idea you came up with at the same time, yeah, you feel like you said, it's that drug. You feel like a maestro.
for sure. That's interesting how that once you flick that switch, even though you realize maybe that's not where the room in my head I need to live in right now. That light is still on. That itch is still getting itchier.
Yeah.
What what do you see? What do you anticipate, if anything, scratching that itch? Because if you don't, eventually it turns into some sort of disease or something. We all know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, man. Like I'm actually in a process now trying to figure out what that next step is. Cause I think if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, I probably would have been working on a set to do a an open mic somewhere.
Mhm.
Um, which I still might do, but I don't know. I got to figure out what that next thing is because it's been years since I've been on stage. The last time I was on stage, I was working at I don't know if I should say the name or not, but I was working at Apple at the time, and it was in South Florida, and they had like this all market, so all the stores in the area came together, and they had like a talent show, as part of the meeting. So everybody was like, they knew I had done stand up. They were like, you have to do this. So I had no choice. And all of my material, if you remember my stuff, like there's no way I could have performed any of that at a corporate event. Like it would have. So I never got booked
Awesome.
for any corporate shows back then, and for obvious reasons. So I had to write. This is my first time writing like a whole new set, whole new 5 minutes of material that I had never practiced. I didn't have time to like practice the set. I just, you once you get on stage a few times, you kind of know what's going to work and what's not. What I remember about that though was that was my first time actually. I had played around and done tangents in my material. That was my first time actually writing in a tangent into the joke and writing a different direction and then coming back to the joke. So I
Mhm.
always thought that was a cool moment. Um, yeah, but if I had known that was my last time, I probably would have milked it a little bit.
Was that? Oh, that was your last time?
That was my last time being on stage. Yeah,
Of not.
I
Wow.
still write jokes. Like I'm sure, of course, I don't think you ever stopped doing that.
Right.
But actually performing, that was the last time.
So you had a clean corporate gig to go out. Did it go
Yeah,
all right?
yeah, it went really well actually. It was people still talk about some of the jokes. Like uh, I had this. It was this one joke about my son who was probably 4 at the time, and it was this stupid joke about him being obsessed with boobs because he was still no, it wasn't 4 because he would have been nursing. So
Uh huh.
it was a stupid joke about him being obsessed with booze because he was nursing, and and me teaching him how to be discreet about it and saying like you got a bumping cup, which is super rapey joke now, but people still say bumping cup. They'll remind me of that joke, and I don't even remember the setup. I don't remember the joke, and
Right.
people still remember that thing. There's always that one thing about a joke that people grab onto, and like that's when you know you have a solid one. And I
Totally.
always thought what was weird, I always thought I was not a great writer.
Hmm.
Like when I was coming up, I always thought I was just like I always thought guys like you, I always like you like Matt Z. I don't know if you remember Matt Z.
Oh yeah.
I always thought some guys like that were just really good writers. And I don't know, didn't think mine was, and then looking back,
You're
uh
like my writing's good.
I was pretty solid. I had a joke that was like, I don't think it was stolen, but it ended up on the Daily Show almost word for word. So I was like, okay, that
That's a
was a
sign.
solid joke.
Right. Right. If you can like spare yourself the personal injury of that, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
You're on the right
Yeah.
track.
I mean, I wasn't doing anything with it. So, I mean, at least it
Did
found
you
a
think
home.
you were a better performer? Or like that
Say
was
again?
did you think your strength was being a better performer or a better improviser or a better
Yeah, I thought it was
personality?
definitely the performance and improvisation. Just, there was a lot of guys that had good jokes, but they couldn't sell it. They couldn't get on stage. And I think that was a big bucket of comics that wanted to do comedy. They wrote comedy and they wrote good jokes, but they couldn't get on stage and sell it and perform it and make it come to life. And that was, I thought, where my strength was. I could really sell it. Like I was charismatic. People were into watching me perform comedy. So I didn't think my jokes were as good as theirs, but I knew I could sell it.
Hmm. Interesting, man. That's and then it's fun. Like, had you stayed in it, eventually you would have been like, "Oh no, my jokes are just as good, if not better. My own thing." Right, right.
Yeah.
But that's a good humility. I think that like if you don't, especially as a younger comedian, like you don't think that you need some improvement in some aspect, like you are setting yourself up to get on a plateau real quickly.
Yeah.
Like that artist, that personality, it's always self-scrutinizing. I think you do need that. But the other weird thing is like we something that's come up in the show a lot is you kind of need that the opposite of that too. You need to be able to delude yourself into thinking that you have a possibility of defying these insane odds to become the next big thing, you know?
Absolutely.
Like when you're sitting there with all these other comics, you make great friends, you're hanging out, you're talking, oh man, I can't wait for this. Oh, it'd be so great if I wrote a sitcom one day. Oh, I'll have you in my writer's room. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
To a certain point, like you need to do that, but it's also like children saying, like, I'm gonna be Superman when I grow up. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be Batman. Like,
Yeah.
did
But
you
they're
have
but believing it.
that ability to like make you believe in yourself slash delude yourself into delaying the inevitable?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, man. I think you have to have that, to even do it, to try it and to commit to it and to stay in it for years. I think you have to have that because why else are you doing it? Like, what are you doing at these seedy bars at 2 a.m? What's the point if it's not that you think it's gonna pay off one day and you're gonna be, headlining the show instead of opening it or
Right.
whatever the case may be. So yeah, I think for sure I had that. Um, and
I
that
wonder
was
if it's like
I think
you have so much of it and you like run out of it at a certain point, you know? Is it
yeah, that might be it might be exactly that where it's you get beat down enough and you don't get that shot or you know what I mean, you stop getting the gigs, you stop getting the opportunities, or you just stop doing it, like in my case where
well, yeah,
you
that's the thing,
feel
because
like
you
can't you
didn't
even do it anymore.
you weren't like bad and then you stopped getting gigs. You walked away,
Yeah,
like
but
that's
there's the same thing though, because it's like right now I feel, can I even be funny anymore? Can I even be funny that same way? And can I even deliver the way I did before? Can I connect with people now that I'm older and the audience may be younger? And I may not know some of the things that are driving that group differently. I felt like more connected to culture at that time. Now I'm like a suburban dad. So it's like, I don't
you come
know.
out there and be like, we're dabbing, right? Is
Yeah,
that what the kids are doing?
exactly. Exactly. I do not want to be that guy. I always
Oh
hated,
man.
like, when you first come up and you have the people that start doing comedy, and they always tell you in those classes, start writing from stuff, and write about your job or stuff like that. And I was like, that's stupid. I never wanted to be, I'm not going to write about being a doctor. Like, there's those people that would write about that stuff. But my thinking was, they didn't come to see a doctor tell jokes. They came to see a comic. So, you can write about your history, but don't make it known that that's what you still do. I always felt like that was how you had to separate that, because they didn't come to see a doctor tell jokes. Like, that's just not something anybody wants to go see.
Interesting. That comes into the line between like comedian and hobbyist almost.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I remember one of the first pieces of advice I got in Tampa was like I would talk a lot about my side job, and then this guy who's super old school, he was like, he pretty much said the same thing. He's like, they don't want to come see a waiter doing comedy. They want to see a comedian doing comedy. Maybe you used to wait tables. Maybe you used,
Right.
you know, but that hobbyist
And that
line is
experience can
mm,
definitely influence like your joke and something that people can relate to, as long as it's across the board. But I fully agree. Like, it shouldn't feel like that at all.
the uh the hobbyist title is something that like when you're in stand-up comedy all the way, it's almost like what's like an insult to people. It's like, he's a hobbyist. There's a dentist. He comes here once every 2 months or whatever. Like on the flip side, now being in a position to be that hobbyist,
Yeah.
like I can appreciate them even more because they're not doing stand up to make it. They're doing stand up
Yeah.
because they want to do stand up.
Yeah. And
It's
I think
that's
that's an interesting differentiation too. But I think that's partly why I haven't like put another set together too, is because I remember how much time it took to get a good set together. Like, I don't want to half-ass it. Like, if I'm going to do it, I want it to be good. I
mm,
want it, even if I'm not trying to get a gig and not trying to get, a feature role at the Improv Houston. Like, I just want it to be good. I want it to be the best 5 minutes or the best 3 minutes or whatever it is. And I know how much time it took for me to craft that. You know what I mean? So that's part of it, is I don't know if even as a hobbyist I could deliver at that level that I would want to.
Yeah,
So, but I think it's also me just talking myself out of it. You know what I mean?
exactly. I think you're gonna have to temper your own expectations because when you were doing it back then, you were hammering the sword every night, you know? You're gonna have to like go easy on yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, before you can get, because that's the only way you could get back to that good set is by giving that mediocre set 10
Yeah,
times and
you're absolutely
figuring it
right.
out.
That's true.
So Texas, this would be
Yeah.
the place that you deliver that set in the future or wherever. Uh, were you from Florida? You from Miami?
I'm from St. Louis originally. And then, but I spent so much time. I moved to South Florida in 99. I
Mm,
was 20 to go to school. So I went to FIU,
FIU, right?
graduated FIU, and I was there, just pretty much stayed. I visited my brother who was living in South Florida at the time. Me and my younger brother visited our older brother in the summer of 99, like before I was in University of Missouri for the year. Uh, we got out, we visited him. He took us to South Beach, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm moving here. Like this is not Missouri, so yeah, I'm out.
Pull a
This is
LeBron James and just be like, I'm gonna hang out in
yeah,
Miami for a while.
exactly. Little did I know that Miami is not a place for broke men, so like it's not it's
Fun to
not made
visit,
for
but
us.
when you live there,
Yeah, it's a very
different.
different vibe. Yeah, but it was cool. I definitely like South Florida for sure. I miss the beach and the food.
Mm. Was the so I mean the cultural difference is what I'm interested in because like having done most of your stand up in Miami, multicultural, crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me time to adjust coming to Denver, big time. What do you think? Do you know anything about the Texas scene? Do you anticipate like there being huge differences
Way,
in
way to give me
culture or
another reason to like not want to do it. I hadn't even thought about that, but now that's another thing to like be concerned about. No, I definitely get there's definitely a huge cultural difference here in Houston than South Florida, obviously. So taking that into account would just take that's part of what you're talking about, just kind of sharpening the sword. So I would have to get out and fall on my face a few times to figure out what works and what doesn't. But I can definitely envision myself going over to Austin because that's only a few hour drive, and trying to get on some stages out there too because that's going to be a vibe that's more similar to what I'm used to.
so yeah, that does seem like a lot less to think about. I'm like, do I wear a 10
Yeah.
gallon hat and a belt buckle or oh no, I could just be myself? Okay, cool, cool,
All right, sounds good. All right, good.
cool. Well,
Because
damn.
it was like, I mean, that was they,
Yeah.
they always talked about when you talk to like more established comics, they used to love coming to West Palm because that was for some reason just a good stage where they could try out new stuff. And I remember going and seeing Chris Rock there one time. Um, I can't remember what special he was working on, but a lot of the jokes that were in that set, you could tell when they're working on stuff. And they usually when they hit a scene like that, they're trying to like find some new jokes and work on a new set or a new special. And he was in that stage where he was in between specials, and it was a great show. But for some reason, I remember hearing that West Palm in particular was like a place where they would test out new material and sharpen their sword,
Huh.
and for some
Interesting.
reason that improv was a spot for that. I don't know why.
I
I would
wonder.
think it would have been one of the other ones, but
Yeah, I'm like, I wonder if it's because it was so like low pressure in a way. I mean, that room is huge, so it
yeah.
feels like a big room. But you know, the improv's
I
the
don't. I think I only performed there once after the renovation, and I did not like the acoustics at all.
it was very like theater.
Yeah,
But I mean, the improvs themselves is a whole can of worms because they have all sorts of different reputations. I talked to one comedian and I can get a completely different opinion on the South Florida improvs than another comedian.
really.
Some people loved it. Some people felt like abused spouses that were neglected and abused. And then all of a sudden, when you're going to leave, they're like, all right, here's a gig. I got a gig for you. There you go. And then,
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see that because
where
there's,
did you fall?
they all had their different fingerprint. I feel like, each one, the one at Fort Lauderdale at Hollywood, which I think is gone now. I don't know. I don't remember, but
Hmm.
that was like home court for me. Like I felt most at home there. I felt welcome there. I was given a shot to like actually get some gigs there. So that one I felt at home. West Palm, I did not like as much. And then Miami felt like a free for all. Like it was just
The
not
jungle.
surprising. Yeah, it just felt wild. Like you never knew what to expect at the Miami Improv. I felt like, But it was a cool room to play, and they just had their own fingerprint. But I could definitely see, we were talking earlier about just that scene around that time, how many good comics came out of the South Florida scene. So I could definitely see how there was that neglect because you had guys like Adrian Mesa, which I thought that guy was hilarious. Like anytime he said anything, it was just funny to me. He
Yeah.
could get up there and read the alphabet, and I would laugh. So just certain people, I felt like didn't get as much of an opportunity in that environment as probably they deserved.
Right.
You were
Yeah.
right there. It's like they wanted to bring. I think they felt like they needed to bring someone else. They had to import the talent when you had plenty of talent there. There was a handful of openings, the only one that stood out was I got a chance to open for Andy Dick. That was the only one that was like the big one for me. I was like,
How was
okay,
that?
it was great. Yeah, he was awesome. He was, nicest guy.
He was polite to
Um,
you. He doesn't have the most polite and well-mannered reputation these
he
days backstage.
wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't. I wasn't one of those guys that was like going to push the issue and get in his face. But he was nice enough. We crossed paths, had a quick conversation, and that was it. It
Didn't
wasn't.
stick his tongue down your throat or anything.
No, yeah, didn't grab anything. I was safe.
Yeah,
He's a nice enough guy. That guy was, yeah, it was a boring story. I guess
I
it
like
would have been
that's
funnier if I
funny
would
when
have
you have a
had.
controversial comic, but it's a boring story about him. Like they're not 100% monster. They had some bad times, but
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. It sounds like he was a horrible person to some people, but yeah, he bought me a drink, and it wasn't. Then I woke up in some. No, it wasn't
right.
that.
Uh, damn, what a different time.
I
Do
know,
you,
right?
how do you tell people about these times in your life? Like who do you reveal that like you used to do stand up or
Yeah,
how
that's
does
a,
that
that's
happen?
always a weird thing because like it is something I'm proud of. You know what I mean? Like when I did it, and it's not something a lot of people do, and so I do feel proud about it. I do want to talk about it. I do want to say, because I did have some decent success in this little. What I feel like I use the analogy of like a high school athlete who got injured. Like he was a high school athlete who was like a standout, running back or whatever the case may be. He was like all region or whatever you call it. And then he got an injury and his D1 scholarship went away and he had NFL dreams. That's how I feel like. And I don't know if I was that good at the time, but I feel like I was that good at the time. And so that's something that I do feel proud about, that I had solid jokes. That was validation. We talked earlier about the Daily Show thing where I saw a joke that was almost word for word. I was like, wow, my jokes were pretty good. It's like I was delivering good material. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, I am proud of it, but it's not something where I like run around saying with a t-shirt on that says I used to be a stand-up comic. When it comes up about, there's always that situation when you get a new job and they do the tell me something interesting about yourself. That's a lot of times where it comes up. Or there's people that I work with now that have known me for years and they just found out maybe a few months ago because it just didn't come up. I'm just, if it comes up organically, then I'll definitely mention it. But yeah, I'm not trying to like run around and be that guy that's holding on to greatness.
Right.
So yeah,
Organically, that's a good way to put it. It is just it becomes like an interesting thing about you.
yeah,
But when you
deservedly
were
so. I think anybody
Mhm.
that's willing to get on stage and try it and do it and commit to it, not just the one time, but like work on it and continue to put different sets together and try different things. Like you hosted a show for a long time. I think those are noteworthy things. That's not something most people do. So it deserves recognition. That's the way I feel about it, at least.
so when you were a stand-up comedian, how readily did you tell people about it? Were you always hustling? And then when people heard you were a stand-up comic and inevitably said, "Tell me a joke," what would you say?
I went, so to answer that one first, I'd go to like the Joe Pesci line where like, what am I, a clown to amuse you? Like, no, kick rocks. You can come to the show if you want to see a joke.
Hmm.
It's like I'm not a wind-up doll where you just like twist it up and the
Totally.
jokes come out.
Sidestep.
So yeah, yeah, get out of here with that. There's no context for it. So like I'm not just gonna run around telling you jokes. Get out of here. So that was usually how I answer that one. But no, it goes back to like what I mentioned earlier, that I didn't think my material was that great. So I didn't market. And at that time, Facebook was really just starting to pop off. So there wasn't really that social media aspect of marketing yourself the way it is now. Like MySpace was the number one at the time. So, and I wasn't great at doing that then, and I still am not great at marketing myself on social media. So I would ask people, and I remember I hosted a show at this place, I think it was called Pulp Live, somewhere off Federal. It was a great venue, and I think they did more like live bands and stuff like that. So they didn't really do a lot of comedy, and they probably didn't after they gave me a shot because we did not pack the house. So, so yeah, it was that was a rough one. I just I wasn't great at that aspect of it, the business side. I'm definitely I think if I was to go do it again now, I have a better understanding of how to use social media and how to market myself and a bit more confidence in
Mhm.
putting myself out there that I think I could do better at that aspect of it now.
Yeah, man. The that's what's so interesting about it is like you take every comedian and like maybe if you gave them the perfect circumstances, like they don't have to worry about money, they don't have to worry about family, no one got sick, there's nothing crazy in their life, they got a trust fund, you
Yeah,
know, those comedians can succeed. Like, it's like, what would it take to make every comedian succeed? Because it
yeah.
would, for the worst people, it would just take a lot more. Um, that's the kind of
There's
like
always that argument though that like how much of the struggle is what is what
you need it,
made you. Yeah, how much of the struggle, how much of that
right?
having to do it is what made you great, is what made you get over the top. So I mean, there's that argument too.
It's
Would
true,
Dave Chappelle have been Dave Chappelle if he just had just an easy upbringing? And he had to obviously he started really early, but
right?
if he
I
didn't have a supportive mother, to your point, if his mother wasn't as supportive as she was, driving him to shows and stuff like that, he probably wouldn't be Dave Chappelle. So there's that element of it. Yeah, you do need to have something that you know
right.
pushes you over the top.
Any because you seem very well adjusted. Some of my guests, they're not as comfortable in their relationship with like having left it behind or just putting it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Do you like in that moment, like going back to when you really had to decide, like, I can't do this anymore? Like, was that tough for you to go through, or did you have those other elements of why you stopped were so powerful that you were like, no, this is my family, this is my kids, like this isn't a bad thing. Like where, if you can remember it all, like going
Where'd I
through
fall
that
on that
that
spectrum?
process.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult, man, because it was something that I really enjoyed. I still love it. The feeling. My wife used to call me Gene Antoine. Like that's when I turn on and I become that. It's like, oh, Gene Antoine. Like, yeah, it's the full. I'm performing now. If I get into groups, and she'll see it start to turn on, she'll be like, oh, Gene Antoine is here tonight. So it's that same thing. I feel like
Alter
I
ego, I
just
love it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was very difficult, man. I remember even though it was costing me money, it was making me nothing. Like I was getting nowhere. I remember this one time, I don't know if you remember Hanson Sinclair, Eric Rodriguez, and a couple other people. I can't remember who else was with us. We drove over to Naples for a gig and did great, but like we just drove over for the day, drank, had fun, and then drove back. Like that stuff was fun. It was a great road trip. It was a great experience hanging out with people. Like I still remember it. So I loved all of that. So leaving it was absolutely hard, but it was, um, there was a cost. Something had to go. You can't have it all. So there was a cost to either decision had a cost. And I felt like with a newborn and with a woman at home, she was my girlfriend at the time. If I continued down that path, they would have been the cost. So it made the separation easier. But it wasn't easy by any stretch.
Mm.
I still have the itch. You know what I mean? Like this is probably 8 years later that I have been on stage since the last time. And like I still have the itch. Like something's got to give. I'm telling my wife now. I'm like, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis or if this is legitimate itch, but like something's got to give, man. So yeah, it's for to be there this long after it definitely was not easy.
Mm. But yeah, I would say do a set instead of buying a Ferrari. Okay, it's a
Yeah.
lot more affordable.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, if you see me with a motorcycle on Facebook all of a sudden, then
No, he went
like
the wrong way.
DM me like, Gene, come on, man. We talked about this.
Oh, motorcycles. I wish I would. If their force fields were invented, I'd have a motorcycle tomorrow. But
Oh
I'm not.
yeah.
I'm not getting clipped out by someone texting on their phone.
Yeah,
Um.
no.
So, what kind of skill set has comedy given you? What kind of tools have you gained from that experience that you still use today that you still value?
You know, I'd say I'm in sales now. So one of the biggest things I think is just relating to people and realizing that there's commonality with everybody. You know, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a Trump supporter.
This interview's over.
Uh,
Forget it. This is a
those,
MAGA podcast.
but and there's a lot of there's folks, and I'm not saying like all Trumps. I'm not trying to put them all in a bucket, but what I am saying is there's ideologies that are very different than what I believe to be true, but it doesn't make me dislike them or or not see that there's still commonality between me and anybody else. You get in a room of people of 300 people or whatever, 400 people, however many people are in a room, and you tell a joke and they all laugh for the same reason at the same time. That means there's commonality amongst all of us. That human experience is relatable. So I think that's one of the biggest things for me is that I can relate to anybody. The fact that I was able to tell jokes that people laugh at, I can relate to anybody in any situation. And just being able to get in front of people and present and talk, that's one of the things that most people are terrified of. And that's the biggest part of my job now. And it makes it very easy to get up and do that. And I think it helps me be successful in this job now, which has nothing to do with comedy, but the skill sets I think translate really well.
Hmm. Are you ever up there like doing some sales and then a little voice in the back of your head is like, oh, this would be really funny to say. And you're like, no, 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 no.
100, yeah,
This is what
100%.
we're
Yeah,
doing.
100%. Yeah, there's absolutely times where I laugh to myself and I'm like, I could never say that in front of these people, but I would love to. I wish I could. And then I write it down for later. Yeah, for sure.
That commonality is interesting because I think that's a good reason you can not worry so much about doing comedy in Texas, since you've already worked so much on that commonality. Texas people ain't that different, you know?
No,
I mean, they are,
they're
but
good
they aren't.
people, man. They're good. They get a bad rap. They're good people down here.
Mm.
Some
And
of them are. Some of them do suck. I'll
it's
be honest.
slowly changing though, from what it's getting a little more purple.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, red, blue. It's like people are people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like people get too deep into their camps, and that causes more division than anything. It's like just talk to people. Once you talk to people, you care about the people. So there's good people here for sure. But there's look, Florida. It's not like Florida's full of good folks. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And maybe Texas is a little more predictable as far as the weird people in Miami. You don't know what
Exactly.
you're
Yeah, you
getting.
kind of know what to expect. Yeah, for sure.
Every country in the world is hanging out there.
Right.
All kinds of people. I love it. All right. So your oldest gets a little bit older, 14, 15 years old. They're like, Dad, I heard you did stand up. I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I would love that, man. And actually, he had was it last year or 2 years ago? There was like a talent show that he was talking about. He's a much more reserved kid. So he's not the gregarious, like outgoing. My daughter, our middle kid, is definitely the big personality. So I
Mm.
could see her maybe doing it, but she's also shy in those moments. So we'd have to bring it out of her. But if they came up and they said they wanted to do it, I was like, when that came up and he said he had a talent show, I was like, let's do stand up. I was trying to get him to do it. I was like, I'll
Nice.
help you write jokes. Like kid jokes are the easiest. Like I can kill in a kid's choice of words. I'll destroy.
Right. It's like playing dodgeball with kids. You're
Yeah,
just like,
it's the
you don't
easiest
even
in
know
the
about the
world.
rule of three. Wow.
Right. We were watching we were watching Avengers, and he actually said the joke that was pretty funny because like on the end game, he was in there, Thanos was making his soup or whatever, and they just came in and cut his arm off. He was like, dang, the guy was just making soup. Like, why is he wasn't even fighting you at this point? Like they're just disrupting his dinner. And I was like, that would work.
He's got the instincts.
Yeah, he's got the jokes. So if he did it, absolutely, I would love it. And I would try to help him. There was a kid, I don't know if you remember him. I don't remember his name, but I think his mom used to do comedy and she helped him write jokes. And he was like 13 years old,
Hmm.
little white kid. And I cannot remember his name, but he had a couple of jokes that were pretty solid.
in South
As soon
Florida.
as the same type of scenario, yeah,
Right.
I
That's
cannot
happening
remember
more
his
than
name for
ever
the life
these
of me.
days. You get some phenoms, some really
Yeah,
young things trying it, which is cool. But
yeah. So if he tried, I would
so
absolutely be behind it,
you
man. Like
wouldn't be
it's
right. I mean, they'd be fine trying it, but what if your kid's like, oh no, I want to be a comic?
go for it. My thing is
You wouldn't
like
have to be like, okay,
whatever.
but watch out for this, watch out for that.
Yeah. No, you gotta live life. Like I'm gonna give you tips on life in general, but there's things that he's gonna have to go through. Like both of my kids, there's things that they're gonna have to go through to figure it out for themselves. But they can filter it through the stuff we give them. But it kind of goes back to what we said earlier. Like me feeling that I started too late and finding my thing that I think was my thing, but finding it at 30. Had they found their thing now, if we can figure out what your thing is now and nurture that, you're going to be happier because then you don't have to make that choice later. You likely won't have to make that choice later because
Hmm.
it's already in you. You've already been working on it. You've been growing it. You've been crafting it. Hopefully find success earlier. So absolutely, I'm for it. Like we're blessed to be in a country where you can make a living doing comedy and making jokes about whatever you want. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens. This cancel culture is kind of ruining comedy a little bit, but uh, I would be behind it for sure. Whatever they want to do, it's like for me, I want them to find their thing early, whatever it
Sure.
is, so that
Get
they
a
don't
Tiger
have to make that
Woods
choice.
jump on it.
Yeah.
You just tape a microphone to your youngest hands right now. Ah.
You will love this.
Uh, you ran into a interesting point there that we can round out maybe the conversation with. How comedy has changed. How we when we got into comedy, we could look in the rearview mirror and see like in the '80s it was a little more cheesy, and now it was getting a little more real, maybe a little more personal, and now we're definitely into an age where like personal stories are more normal than like jokes you could steal from someone else.
Yeah.
But wokeness and cancel culture and comedy that is more right than funny, those are all issues that I hear people bring up as far as like
Yeah.
the challenges in comedy these days. Do you have any opinions? You mentioned cancel culture. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's you can't. I just feel like you can't. There's a line, right? The whole Kramer thing. I remember when that happened, and he was just like yelling at the guy, saying the N word. A part of me, as a comic, wants to be like, he's trying something. It's horrible what he did, but I feel like we have to have the space to be able to try something, like, and be smart about it. Like what he did was just stupid, and it's probably a terrible example. But
it's the most extreme example. It's a good example,
yeah,
but like and the aftermath, you like, I don't think there's not a lot of evidence that he's an actual racist person. But
right.
there's a lot of evidence that he takes a lot of comedic risks, and this was the dumbest comedic risk of his life.
Exactly. Exactly. And it cost him, you know what I mean? And long as it, because he it's the most extreme example. Like he took it as far as you possibly could take it,
Yeah,
and it didn't work. It
sure
cost
did.
him a lot.
Happy
But
Black
fortunately, he
History
had
Month,
already.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's ironic. Good. Well done, Reskin. Well done. But I think there's got to be some space for people because it's one thing for like Dave Chappelle to do Sticks and Stones. He's already Dave Chappelle, and he's already hilarious. So he can take that and make it funny. And there's going to be people that are mad about it, but there's going to be a lot more people that are okay with it because he's Dave Chappelle. Now, if Gene or Daniel goes out and tries to do that at the same time, and we're at the local comedy store, whatever it is that going to land? No. Are we going to have the space? Are we going to be able to do that? No,
Right.
because I feel like people are just way too sensitive now about these things. And I mean, it's really wild how things can change so quickly. Because you can always go back, like you watch Eddie Murphy Raw, for example, when he was talking about being in San Francisco. That was a horrible joke, in terms of if you filter it through today, like
A lot doesn't hold up.
no, but it's a hilarious joke. So you have to keep things in context, and I'm not saying he was right for saying it. I'm just saying he's wrong. I'm not trying to be like the moral compass on it, but you have to take things as part of the time as well. Like you can't go back and then cancel that special. That's one of the greatest comedy specials of all time.
Right.
So you can't go back and cancel that because he said some offensive things, which are lousy. Um, but you acknowledge that. So I don't know. I feel like people have to have the space now. So I feel
To
like
fail, right?
this culture is going to really stymie the up and coming comics. Like it might not affect stuff now, because you have artists like Kevin Hart and Bill Burr and maybe not Kevin Hart, but Bill Burr and Louis C.K. got canceled.
Outspoken, these outspoken
Yeah,
guys.
you have these guys that are going to go for it and they have the clout to
I
do
mean,
it.
Chappelle is
But
one of them, right? I mean, and they get the
yeah,
backlash. I mean, he got so much backlash from the specials, but it was drowned
he's
out
going to
by
do it.
the people who understood what he was doing and the success and
Exactly. So in 10 years' time, what is this comedy scene going to look like? Is it going to be the sterilized, you know, version of itself? I'm not excited for I'm not excited for it just because I feel like it's gonna come at a cost. It's kind of been the theme of the episode. Like every decision has a cost, and I think that's gonna affect the quality of comedy. But that's also one of the things that makes me nervous about getting back out there too.
yeah, sure. Everyone's walking on eggshells in a certain way. And I definitely, I don't know how it's going to get dealt with, but comedy is definitely going to have to deal with this issue in a way that like you let people fail at a certain level without lighting them on fire and like throwing them
Right.
away. Like we can't throw people
But
away
how do you
so
do
quickly.
that though with social media? Like it happens in a blink and you can be done in a blink before you even get started. You know what I mean? Like how do you navigate that? You're still going out. So how do you navigate it?
I mean, I think I'm in a good position because my natural opinions are not really like cancelable opinions.
Right. I'm
Um,
pretty safe.
but but at the same point, I don't shy away from like controversial issues. But I do, I mean, I err on the side of kindness, I err on the side of explanation. And there's a certain amount of like, if you were going to tell a joke about this 10 years ago about like a culture, maybe you could just tell it. But now maybe you need a line explaining like, when I grew up, I spent I was with Jamaicans all this time in my kung fu group, and we did all this stuff. And now
Yeah.
if I do a Jamaican accent, it's not racist or something like that. Like
Yeah.
because I spent hours, years of my life
Yeah.
hanging
You got
around.
to qualify it now.
There's some kind of explanation. There's some kind of like, who's this guy? How can this guy say that what this is? And that was, I mean, in Miami, I love doing all sorts of multicultural accents and explorations and stuff. In Denver, I had to pump my brakes because certain ways they would take it, or if I didn't set it up the right way, they're like, "Who's this white boy? What the hell?" And like, is he
Yeah.
just like me, who's never met a brown person in my life, or so many people. But definitely, I don't think it's a. I think it's like the Me Too movement in that it's something that we really needed, but it has gone to an extreme where maybe like certain people that didn't deserve to be on the level of Harvey Weinstein, like Aziz Ansari, that whole thing.
Yeah.
He had some clumsy bullshit, but he was no Harvey Weinstein,
Yeah.
or Al Franken. Like we cancel those people who had done way less offenses. I think we're gonna have to just let the pendulum swing back. It's good that we're sensitive. It's good that comedy is now about relating personal, deeply unimitatable stories and stuff, but it's still fart jokes and it's still poop jokes and it's still,
Right.
you know, it's always going to be a line. But yeah, I think we're swinging back from it, and I'm curious to see how the next generation who is raised in this
Right.
either rebels against it or figures it
Leans
out.
into it.
Or
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and old farts like us will be like, "Whoa, I never thought of that. That's an
Right.
interesting
Back in my
angle."
day, yeah, we'll either be complaining about it or saying, oh, that's a smart way to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, I hope I appreciate it because there's that side of me that I don't know. Can you still watch stand up? For a while, I couldn't.
I it's funny you bring that up. I don't watch it. A special will come out and I'll like want to watch it and then I just don't. And I don't know
All the
why that
time.
is. I haven't really reconciled why that is, but I think it's just I don't know. I feel like it's maybe like having your heart broken, like you're in a relationship with somebody and you just you break up, you don't want to see pictures of them anymore. You don't
Yeah,
you block them on Facebook. So I think part of it's that where I just I don't want to feel like I'm missing out. I don't want to feel like that. So I avoid it.
100%. I will put so many specials on my queue to watch, and
Yeah.
And then I'll
Never
watch
watch
like
it.
an hour-long YouTube video instead. I could, whatever.
Yep. We got to figure that out, Reskin. We got to do something about that. That's not healthy either.
It's true. Right. We're only hurting ourselves. We're only depriving ourselves of something we enjoy,
Exactly.
done at a high level. Well, cool. I believe that's most of the questions I have. If there's anything else that you would like to touch on or talk about or promote or anything like that, the
Yeah.
floor's yours.
Nothing to promote. Yeah, nothing.
Any
Yeah,
upcoming
nothing to
sales
talk.
shows
Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah. Our business, we have a great now. No, yeah, nothing specific to talk about, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's actually been kind of therapeutic to be able to talk through it and reflect a bit. So yeah, thanks for having me, man.
good. That is like it was therapy for me, and it's there. That's I'm happy to know that other people can gain something from it as well.
Yeah,
And the people
absolutely.
listening, I've heard people listening who aren't even into comedy. They're like, this applies to my life directly, and I've never been near someone.
Really,
So
that's
yeah, a lot of
interesting.
people
I wouldn't even think about that.
dealing with failure slash renewal.
Yeah,
You know,
true. I'm
Zadie,
sure a
get
lot
out.
of artists and musicians can relate, actually.
Totally. And even just like accountants, fucking like everyone's got that something in them, and like maybe to them their stand-up comedy is like swimming or some shit,
Right.
You never
It's
know.
true. It could be anything, whatever that passion is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for exploring it. Thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your story with us.
For sure, man. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Official close. Thank you, Gene Antoine.
Gene Antoine out.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.